So again, one reason that I wanted to have you on today is because I just had Nick Brana and Zainab Day on, and we talked about Middle Seat, which is this consulting firm that works with a lot of Justice Democrats, but also works with Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden. So I'm just curious if you had any kind of thoughts that you wanted to share about Middle Seat. I know you did some investigation into them, and then just also any other kind of big money influence on Justice Democrats.
I will say one thing about Middle Seat is that they have blown up for sure. They're making more money than they ever thought possible over the last election cycle, and going into this one, they're going to make a killing. And I think a lot of that was a big step for them was whenever they started working with the Biden campaign towards the end of 2020, and actually like they take credit for building like a giant machine that got Biden elected. Like, it's kind of crazy how proud they are about it. But be that as it may, the only thing that really got into me with Middle Seat is when I was doing a piece about political consulting and political consulting firms, media firms, and basically just seeing, how many of them dipped into the PPP pool. And, it's interesting, while, Middle Seat was killing them, they actually dipped. They actually got, they made like $16 million during 2020, and they still managed to pull in like a $500,000 PPP loan.
Wow.
And so that was, and that's about as far as, like, I haven't really looked too much into them because, I mean, obviously other people have done wonderful reporting on them. But like you said, they're very much linked to Justice Democrats. And as we know, Justice Democrats is not what it used to is. That doesn't mean what it used to mean, right? If it ever meant anything. But so again, I've said before, there's lots of big money to be made working for campaigns and working for PACs and stuff like that, which, if you've noticed, again, Justice Democrat linked and related super PACs have been popping up all over the place over the last 6 to 8 months, right? And a lot of that has got to do with, a lot of the.
I'm sorry, I actually haven't noticed. So, who are some of those super PACs?
Sure. Oh, yeah. So, we've got the No Excuses PAC, right? That was started by Zach Exley and Corbin Trent, right?
Zach Exley is a co-founder of Middle Seat, right?
He was a co-founder of Justice Democrats. He's has maybe possibly a co-founder. If not, he was a partner at some point with Middle Seat Consulting. He's got his own thing now called New Consensus. It's another little consulting firm that he does, but he's also involved in numerous little smaller super PACs. One of them was called No Excuses PAC, which was formed earlier last year when there was the debate going on about whether Sinema and Manchin were going to go for the stimulus package, right? So they decided that they wanted to start a new little super PAC to buy billboards and do radio commercials that were going to pressure Sinema and Manchin to basically go for the package. And they raised like $100,000 in the first 6 months, right? They only spent $14,000 on it, on ads. Corbin Trent, on the other hand, made himself like $7,500 a month. So like 45 grand almost, if I'm doing my math right. So, like I said, it's not all about it's not all about doing what you say you're going to do, because a lot of it has to do with making money, right? And again, that's what any opportunity, every super PAC that gets made needs a treasurer. It needs somebody to make their ads for them, right? It needs somebody to manage their books. It needs somebody to do a million different things. And these politics shops like Middle Seat, who are already obviously well connected to everybody in this sphere, right? Anybody in the Justice Democrats area of politics that wants to start a super PAC or anything like that, I mean, Middle Seat's going to be the person they go to, or it's going to be the organization they go to. I mean, that's just That's just pure and simple. There's also blue wave political partners. That's where, you know, Laura Haggard and that was Bernie Sanders, ex-treasurer. You know, that's also like a pretty big section of the progressive consulting world over there. Like I said, lots of money. And again, you know, and it's not just Justice Democrats, even though, you know, interestingly enough, when we're talking about Justice Democrats and, you know, obviously they've taken, you know, their super PAC themselves, like they changed from a PAC to a super PAC last year. Again, just reversing course on a lot of different rhetoric as far as campaign finance stuff goes, which is, you know, obviously, as you know, chiefly what I look at, because I feel like it's really important that, you know, especially if you're going to be, if you're a politician and you're going to be out here telling us that you're against billionaires and you're against big money in politics, and then you turn around and start a super PAC, you know, it just makes you look like a liar, right? Or and how are we supposed to discern you from your competition at that point? You know, so I mean, it's troublesome. And you see that time and time again. We've seen it with Justice Democrats, how they've taken money from Way to Win and stuff like that whenever it comes to their PAC. You know, we see this a lot, most blatantly with Sunrise Movement, who, you know, look, what's Sunrise Movement's big messaging point, right? It's we're youth-led grassroots coalition of concerned teenagers and young people fighting for an environment, you know, stuff like fighting for a Green New Deal. That's what they bill themselves as, right? But the problem is that they're pulling in millions of dollars, and a lot of it is coming from the same people and institutions that are propping up all of the establishment candidates and all of the establishment politics that they claim to be fighting. For example, like I've said, they got $1 million from George Soros and his Open Society Policy Center in 2020. They got $950,000 from the 1630 Fund, who, by the way, is one of the largest dark money outfits in the entire country. It spent almost $60 million funding super PACs anonymously, by the way. Well, you know, their money, the people that donated to them basically got to remain hidden and just pull it together. And 1630 Fund donated $60 million into American politics in the 2020 election, which, you know, was obscene. And, you know, so that's dark money. That's billionaire, like the biggest of the big billionaire. And then we go trickle on down to, you know, the Heising Simons Foundation, who, for those that don't know, the Simons in that is Elizabeth Simons, who is the daughter of James Simons, who is the founder of Renaissance Technologies, right? He's huge, super, like one of the largest hedge funds in the country, right? Big DNC connections there. You've got, you know, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundations, think Hewlett Packard. So you've got money, you know, you've just got big money, $300,000 from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. The list goes on and on. And that's my big issue. And that's what a lot of my work I do is, you know, I'm basically trying to lift the veil. A lot of these organizations claim to be something that they just simply are not. And they're fooling a lot of people into, you know, look, if you're getting $1 million from Soros, you're getting $950,000 from, you know, an amalgamation of a bunch of different anonymous billionaires. You're getting this, you're getting 6-figure checks from the Rockefeller Fund. Stop saying that you're grassroots. Stop saying that you're independent, right? Going back to Justice Democrats themselves have an associated 501c4 organization or a dark money group. It's called Organize for Justice. Now, I should say that it started in 2018 off a $50,000 grant that we don't know who. We don't know how much money they made in 2020 because I was just finally able to see their taxes for 2019. So it's not a lot. It's $1 million, right? They got $1 million in 2019. Organize for Justice did. But 250,000 of that came from George Soros. So that's 25%, one donor, right? And it might be a small amount, but that's all we have to go on.
Mm.
And the facts are what the facts are. And again, like Soros, I don't say him, I don't invoke his name to invoke some kind of boogeyman kind of thing. I say that to say that, for one thing, he's got terrible investments. If you want to, if you're an environmental group or somebody pushing for any kind of progressive advocacy, he has terrible investments that definitely do not align with progressive philosophies. But also, again and again, I will say this over and over, having such big money from not just one of the biggest power players in Democratic politics, like the guy in Democratic power player, the Democratic power player, mega donor extraordinaire. You don't want that anywhere near anything considered grassroots or independent or progressive. I'm sorry, that's just not what you want. So yeah, when I say his name, and I wouldn't have to say it so much if he wasn't literally everywhere I look when I'm doing this work. I mean, his spending has not gone down. It's actually just been increasing and increasing.
Yeah, so, no, it seems silly sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I even in kind of investigating the Green Party, I found that one of the late real leaders within the Green Party, there's a Nation article saying that he sat down with George Soros in the late 90s and received over $100,000. So
yeah, I've read it. Yeah, that's true. And like I said, and it goes from and it just continues and snowballs. If it wasn't going to be Soros, it would be someone else, right? But it just happens to be him. But that's just to say that this problem with dark money that we have in American politics, it's progressives are not immune. In fact, they are embracing it, and it's a problem. And
well, I mean, honestly, I think in particular they're the target, though, right? I mean, if you're a billionaire, mm-hmm. Who are you really afraid of? It's a grassroots populist leftist movement who is going to be opposed to the establishment and opposed to the institutions that you already have control of. So you really have to infiltrate them and spread disinformation and get them to think that anyone, sticking true to their principles, being a populist, being anti-imperialist, that they're being funded by Assad and Putin, and they're really the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic co-optation, right? If that would be the one thing that you're scared of, right? If you're the billionaire class, is an uprising of the working class. So, what do? Anything you can to infiltrate the working class by any means necessary. And a lot of this stuff, do I believe that there are a lot of, well-meaning young people that are legitimately trying to just, be activists and do the right thing, that are a part of these groups, because it's not just Sunrise. Working Families Party is full of billionaire and corporate money, or billionaire money, excuse me, in foundations like we've been talking about, like, and it's what is it? Indivisible. I mean, Indivisible is a sponsored Democracy Alliance, organization, like a lot of these, like Working Families Party, like Move On, all of these organizations that build themselves as these in the streets grassroots organizations are just simply being guided by the billionaire hand in the nonprofit consultancy class, and kind of like Middle Seat is for politics. There's an entire industry of organizations that basically manage what nonprofits invest in, and it's not a donation a lot of times from these political groups. These are investments. You don't just give any. I don't care what anybody says. There's no such thing as no strings attached. Where you're talking millions of dollars. I mean, whatever. And and that's the problem too. I think that we're just in a dangerous space right now of because you hear the phrase a lot, unilateral disarmament. I'm not sure if you've heard anybody say that when talking about super PACs or dark money and stuff in politics. Right. Elizabeth Warren was really big on that, because when Warren was running in the primary, that the billionaire Carla Trevetson started a super PAC for her. And, when Warren was questioned about it, he was like, well, I thought you said you weren't going to be, in favor of super PACs and blah, blah, blah. And Warren said, well, we're not just going to unilaterally disarm, right? Basically meaning, well, the right's doing it, so why can't we do it? But the problem is that the more you act like the right, the more you're going to be like the right. You know, I don't really know how else to say it. Like the less difference there comes between the two of you. And Republicans do Republican stuff better than Democrats. I mean, they always have. That's why every time a conservative Democrat goes up against a conservative Republican, almost all the time Democrats lose, because, you know, they're not staying true to what they're supposed to be doing. And it's just like, you know, people want to wonder why Democrats keep losing. There's a millions of reasons of why, but, you know, progressive Democrats in particular aren't faring much better because they're embracing establishment Democrat tactics, both in politics and in their nonprofit sphere. And it's showing. It's becoming very obvious and clear to those that are paying attention.